I still remember the very first day I decided to learn English seriously. I was 15, sitting on my bed with my phone in my hand, scrolling through social media. I kept seeing videos of people around the world speaking English so confidently, with smiles on their faces, sharing their stories, making jokes, living in a world that seemed much bigger than mine. I could only understand small pieces. Hello, thank you, good morning. But even those small words sounded powerful to me. I realized that if I wanted to connect with the world, I needed English. It wasn't just another school subject anymore. It was a key, a bridge, something that could change my life.
At that time, my English level was almost zero. I knew the alphabet, some basic words, and how to say, "My name is Omar." That was it. In school, our teacher mostly wrote grammar rules on the board, explaining them in our native language. We rarely spoke. We memorized verbs and tenses like machines, but never used them in real life. I used to sit in class quietly repeating the words in my head, but never daring to speak them aloud. I was afraid of making mistakes, of being laughed at by my classmates. But deep down, I wanted to change that. I wanted to speak freely, to sound natural, to feel confident when I said even the simplest things.
My journey really began at home. I started by talking to myself. It felt silly at first, but it helped. I would stand in front of the mirror and pretend to have conversations. "Hello, how are you?" I'd say to my reflection. Then I'd answer myself, "I'm fine, thank you. And you?" Sometimes I imagined I was talking to a friend from another country, or that I was being interviewed on TV. It was strange, but it made me feel brave. I learned to laugh at my own mistakes instead of being ashamed of them.
My parents noticed my new habit. My mother once came into my room while I was practicing and asked, "Who are you talking to?" I smiled and said, "I'm talking to myself in English." She laughed softly and said, "That's good. Keep going." My father, on the other hand, was curious. He didn't understand English, but he liked that I was learning something new. He started asking me simple questions. "What is this in English?" pointing at objects like book or cup. I'd answer proudly, and he'd nod, impressed. Sometimes he'd mispronounce words on purpose just to make me laugh, and that made our house feel like a little classroom. My parents couldn't teach me, but they supported me with love and humor, and that was enough to keep me motivated. After a few months of studying alone, I realized that I needed people to practice with. I talked to my two best friends, Ryan and Kareem, who were also interested in improving their English. We made a simple rule. Whenever we met, we would try to speak only in English. The first days were hilarious. None of us knew how to form proper sentences. Our conversations went like this.
"Hello, Ryan. How you today?" I fine. And you?" "I am good. Very good. Let's go school now." We laughed so much that our classmates thought we were joking. But we kept going. We used English mixed with our language, and every day we learned new words. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. We even created a group chat on WhatsApp and named it English Squad. We agreed to text only in English, even if it took longer. At first, we wrote messages like, "I go to shop now," or "You come tomorrow?" Over time, Those became, I'm going to the shop now, and are you coming tomorrow? It felt great to see our mistakes slowly disappearing.
At home, my English practice became part of my daily routine. After dinner, I would spend an hour watching YouTube videos. I started with simple ones, kids' stories, basic English lessons, short dialogues. I repeated every phrase until I could say it naturally. Sometimes I'd pause the video and copy the speaker's tone, the way they moved their lips, the rhythm of their sentences. My parents often watched me with amusement. "You look like you're talking to the computer," my mother said once, and I replied, "I am. The computer is my teacher." She smiled and shook her head, but she could see how serious I was.
Music also became a big part of my learning. I listened to English songs every day, trying to catch the lyrics. I printed them out and sang along. My favorite song was Perfect by Ed Sheeran. At first, I barely understood anything. But after reading the lyrics many times, I started recognizing words when I heard them. One night, I sang the whole song in front of my parents. My mother clapped and said, "Wow, you sound like you understand everything." I laughed and said, "Almost." It felt like magic, like I was finally connecting with a world that once felt far away.
One of the most important parts of my journey was learning to think in English. It didn't happen overnight. At first, I translated everything in my head. When I wanted to say something, I thought it in my language and then tried to find the English words. That was slow and confusing. But the more I practiced, the easier it became. I started describing things in my head as I saw them. The sky is blue today. I'm walking to school. I'm hungry. Simple thoughts, but they trained my brain to stay in English mode. Soon, it became natural. I even started dreaming in English sometimes.
My friends and I took our practice to another level. We began meeting every weekend to have English days. We'd go to the park, the cafe, or just walk around speaking only English. We prepared topics before meeting, things like our favorite movies, travel plans, or school memories. Sometimes we recorded ourselves and listened later to spot mistakes. It was strange hearing our voices speaking English, but it also made us proud. We realized that learning a language wasn't about memorizing grammar. It was about using it, living it.
Not everyone understood our passion. Some classmates made fun of us. They said, "Why do you speak English? You're not from America." Others rolled their eyes and called us the English boys. But that only made us stronger. We laughed it off because we knew we were doing something valuable. Every time someone mocked us, I thought about the future, about being able to travel, study abroad, or work with people from other countries. That dream was bigger than their laughter.
My relationship with my parents also changed because of English. They became part of my journey in their own way. My mother started learning a few words just to talk to me. Sometimes she'd come into my room and say, "Good morning, my son," or "How are you today?" Her pronunciation was funny, but I always answered with a big smile. My father, who loved reading newspapers, asked me to translate short English headlines for him. He said it helped him feel younger, like he was learning too. On weekends, we played small games. I'd show them English flashcards, and they had to guess the words. Those moments made learning feel like a family thing, full of laughter and warmth.
After about a year, I felt more confident. I could understand most YouTube videos without subtitles, read simple articles online, and even write short paragraphs. But I still struggled with speaking fast. Whenever I met someone who spoke English well, I froze. My tongue felt heavy, my mind blank. I decided to fix that. I joined an online group where people practiced speaking English together. My first video call terrified me. When it started, my hands were shaking. A girl from India said, "Hi, how are you?" And I could barely reply, "I'm fine, thank you." But the people were kind, and they encouraged me to keep going. After a few sessions, I started speaking more naturally, using expressions I'd learned from movies and friends. It felt like my world was expanding again. By that time, English wasn't just a language anymore. It was part of my life. I started helping others at school who were struggling. I explained grammar in simple ways, shared YouTube links, and told them about our English Squad. Teaching others helped me learn even faster because it forced me to think carefully about words and meanings. One day, our teacher asked us to give a short presentation in English about any topic we liked. I chose to talk about my journey of learning English. When I stood in front of the class, I was nervous, but as soon as I started speaking, the fear disappeared. I told them how I practiced at home, with my parents, and with my friends. When I finished, the class clapped. My teacher smiled proudly and said, "See what happens when you believe in yourself?" That moment changed everything. I realized I wasn't that shy student anymore who hid behind textbooks. I was someone who could communicate, inspire others, and express myself in another language. That was powerful. But I didn't stop there. I kept studying every day, even if just for 20 minutes. I made English part of my routine, reading quotes every morning, writing small diary entries at night, watching short clips during lunch. My parents kept supporting me. My mother sometimes brought me tea while I studied, saying, "Keep going, you're doing amazing." My father asked me to teach him how to introduce himself in English. He'd practice saying, "Hello, my name is Hassan," over and over until he got it right. We laughed so much, but those small moments meant the world to me.
The more I practiced, the more confident I became with my friends, too. We no longer spoke only basic sentences. We had real conversations. We discussed life, dreams, movies, and plans for the future, all in English. Our vocabulary grew, our pronunciation improved, and our mistakes became fewer. Sometimes we corrected each other gently. Other times we just laughed and kept talking. We realized that fluency doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from not being afraid to speak.
As the months passed, my English practice became a normal part of everyday life. It wasn't just something I did after school anymore. It was something I lived. Whenever I watched a movie with my family, I asked to keep the subtitles in English. At first, my parents complained that they didn't understand anything, but eventually they got used to it. My mother even started asking me, "What did he say?" whenever a scene passed too quickly. I'd pause the movie and translate for her, proud that I could do it. My father sometimes repeated random words he heard, like amazing or beautiful, just to make us laugh. Our living room slowly became a small English corner without us even planning it. At night, when everyone else was asleep, I stayed up listening to podcasts. I liked the sound of native speakers talking naturally, even when I didn't catch every word. Their rhythm fascinated me. I'd lie in bed repeating short phrases quietly. "That's interesting. I totally agree. You know what I mean?" Those small expressions made me feel like I was part of a bigger conversation happening somewhere out there in the world. Sometimes I fell asleep with my earphones still on, dreaming of talking fluently with people from different countries. One day, something unexpected happened at school. A new English teacher joined our class. Her name was Miss Sarah, and she had lived in the UK for several years. The first day she entered the room, everyone went silent. She started speaking in clear, confident English from the very first minute, and most of the class froze. But I felt excited. For the first time, I could understand almost everything she said. She asked questions, and only a few of us dared to answer. I raised my hand. My voice trembled a bit, but I spoke. When I finished, she smiled and said, "Good job, you're doing great." That simple sentence stayed with me all day. I told my parents about it at dinner, and my father said, "See, all that talking to yourself worked." Miss Sarah noticed that I was motivated, so she started giving me small challenges. "Try writing a short paragraph about your weekend," she said once. I wrote it, checked it 3 times, and handed it to her the next day. When she returned it, she had written "excellent progress" in red ink. Those 2 words felt like a medal. I began writing more: letters, small stories, diary entries. My English notebook turned into a collection of my thoughts, dreams, and goals. Sometimes I even wrote conversations I imagined having with friends abroad. Meanwhile, my 2 friends, Ryan and Kareem, kept pushing me further. We had started watching English series together. Our favorite was Friends. We chose 1 episode every weekend and watched it with English subtitles. We paused after every joke, repeating the lines and trying to understand the humor. We laughed at Chandler's sarcasm, tried to copy Joey's expressions, and quoted Ross whenever something funny happened in real life. Soon, we were using lines from the show in our daily conversations. It made learning feel effortless. But there were also moments of frustration. Some days I felt stuck. I'd hear native speakers talking so fast that I understood nothing. I'd compare myself to people on YouTube who seemed perfect, and I'd think, "I'll never be like them." Those days were hard. I sometimes wanted to quit. My parents noticed my mood and asked what was wrong. I told them, "I'm studying every day, but I still make so many mistakes." My mother smiled gently and said, "Even when you learned to walk, you fell many times, but you didn't stop." Her words hit me deeply. The next day, I started again, stronger than before. To make learning more fun, I began teaching my parents small things. After dinner, I'd say, "Okay, today's word is delicious." They repeated it, sometimes pronouncing it in the funniest ways. We'd all laugh, but by the end of the week, they remembered the words. My father liked learning greetings the most. He'd say, "Good morning," to me every day, exaggerating his accent, and I'd answer, "Good morning, Dad." My mother, on the other hand, loved learning phrases like, "How are you?" and "I'm fine." She used them with everyone, even the neighbors, who had no idea what she was saying. It became a family joke, but secretly, I loved that my passion was influencing them too.
One Saturday afternoon, my friends and I decided to make our first full conversation video in English. We set up Kareem's phone on a stand in the park and started recording. The plan was simple. Talk for 5 minutes about any topic, only in English. The first seconds were awkward. We kept forgetting words and laughing nervously. But after a while, the conversation started flowing. We talked about school, movies, food, dreams, everything. When we finished, we watched the video together. We couldn't believe how far we'd come. Even though our pronunciation wasn't perfect, we were actually communicating. That video became a symbol of progress. We promised to make one every month just to track how much we improved.
After that, our English days turned into a tradition. Every Sunday, we met in a cafe and spoke only English for 2 hours. Sometimes we even invited new people from school who wanted to join us. It felt strange at first, sitting in a public place and speaking another language, but eventually we stopped caring about what others thought. We became known as the English group. Some students started coming to us for help with homework. Others asked how we practiced. We realized that we were not just learners anymore. We were becoming examples for others.
At home, I continued talking to myself whenever I could. I narrated everything I did. Now I'm making tea. I have to finish my homework. I'm tired, but I'll study a little more. It felt like I had an English friend living inside my head. Sometimes I even argued with that imaginary friend when I made a mistake. No, not I goed, it's I went. Come on. My parents heard me once and thought I was talking to someone on the phone. When they realized I wasn't, they just shook their heads and laughed. They didn't understand how important that habit was. It was how I built confidence when no one was around.
There was one moment I'll never forget. My family hosted a small dinner for my father's friend, who brought his teenage son. To everyone's surprise, the boy spoke fluent English. My father looked at me proudly and said, "My son can speak English too. Talk to him." My heart started beating fast. I wasn't ready for that kind of challenge, but I smiled and started the conversation. "Hi, nice to meet you," I said nervously. "Nice to meet you too," he replied smoothly. We started talking about school, hobbies, and music. I stumbled a few times, but I managed to keep the conversation going. My parents listened quietly, smiling the whole time. When the boy left, my father said, "You did great, son." That moment stayed with me forever. It was proof that all my late-night practice was paying off.
Over time, English began to shape how I saw the world. I followed English-speaking YouTubers, read blogs, and joined online forums. I even made friends from other countries. There was Maria from Brazil, Ken from Japan, and Ahmed from Egypt. We talked through voice calls and text messages, correcting each other's mistakes and sharing culture.
I realized that English wasn't just a subject or skill, it was a bridge connecting me to people I'd never have met otherwise. Every conversation made me more confident. Every mistake made me stronger. One rainy evening, I sat in my room, thinking about how far I had come. I opened my old notebooks, filled with misspelled words and broken sentences. Reading them made me smile. I could still remember how hard I'd struggled to say even the simplest things. Now I could express my feelings, tell stories, and understand movies without subtitles. I thought about my friends, my parents, my teachers, all the people who had been part of this journey. I realized that I wasn't just learning English. I was learning patience, discipline, and courage. My parents noticed how fluent I had become. My mother asked me to teach her more, saying she wanted to surprise her friends with some English sentences. My father said, "You should teach kids in the neighborhood." I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he was serious. So I started small, helping 2 younger kids who lived next door. I taught them basic greetings, colors, and numbers. Seeing their eyes light up when they learned something new reminded me of my own beginnings. It made me realize that sharing knowledge was one of the best ways to keep learning.
One Sunday, during one of our English group meetings, Kareem suggested we record a podcast together. "We can talk about how we learned English from zero," he said. The idea excited us. We spent days preparing, writing topics, and practicing our speech. When we finally recorded it, we spoke for almost 20 minutes straight, all in English. We talked about our early struggles, our funny mistakes, and the joy of learning. When we uploaded it online, we got comments from people around the world saying our story inspired them. It was unbelievable. Just a few years earlier, we could barely say, "How are you?" And now people were listening to us for motivation.
After our podcast gained a few hundred plays online, something changed inside me. I started to believe that English wasn't just something I practiced anymore. It was a part of who I was. I noticed that when I thought, some thoughts came in English automatically. It was strange at first, like having 2 voices in my head, one in my native language and another in English, but over time they blended together. I realized I could switch between them without even noticing. That was the moment I knew English had become truly natural for me. My friends and I continued our Sunday meetups, but now we added new challenges every week. One time, we decided to speak for an entire day only in English, no matter what happened. It was hilarious. We went to the market, ordered drinks, talked to strangers, and whenever someone didn't understand us, we laughed and tried again. People looked at us curiously, but we didn't care anymore. What used to make us nervous now made us proud. We weren't afraid to make mistakes in front of anyone.
At home, my parents supported me more than ever. My mother loved to hear me speak English, even if she didn't understand everything. Sometimes she asked me to translate songs or short videos she saw online. I would explain them slowly, word by word, and she'd repeat them after me. "You're my teacher now," she'd say, smiling. My father began watching football commentaries in English, pretending he understood, and I'd sit next to him explaining the phrases. The whole family was somehow learning together without planning it. Then came a big moment. My school announced an English speech competition. Miss Sarah encouraged me to join, but I hesitated. Speaking English in class was one thing. Standing on a stage in front of hundreds of students was another. I didn't want to embarrass myself. But my friends insisted. "Come on," Kareem said. "You've got this. You talk to yourself every day. Now talk to everyone else." He was right. I spent a week preparing a speech titled How English Changed My Life. I wrote every sentence carefully, practiced pronunciation, recorded myself, and listened again and again until I sounded confident. The day of the competition, my hands were shaking as I held the microphone. I looked at the crowd, so many faces staring back at me. My heart pounded, but then I remembered Miss Sarah's advice. Don't focus on being perfect. Focus on being understood. I took a deep breath and started speaking. The words came out smoother than I expected. I talked about my first struggles, about watching Friends with my friends, about teaching my parents new words. When I finished, there was silence for a second, and then applause. Loud, real applause. I couldn't stop smiling. I didn't win first place, but Miss Sarah hugged me and said, "You spoke from your heart. That's what matters." I felt like I had already won.
That evening, I came home to find my parents waiting for me. They already knew what had happened. Someone from the school had told them. My father handed me a small notebook and said, "Keep writing your stories. One day you'll tell them in many languages." It was the best gift I could have asked for. I filled that notebook with dreams, traveling abroad, meeting new people, using English at work, maybe even studying in another country. English wasn't just a skill anymore. It was a door to a new version of myself.
A few months later, something unexpected happened. My family met a couple of tourists asking for directions. They spoke only English, and everyone looked at me instantly. "You talk to them," my father said. I stepped forward, nervous but excited. The tourists wanted to find a nearby cafe. I explained where it was and gave them simple directions. They smiled and thanked me, surprised that I spoke clearly. My family clapped jokingly when they left. "Our translator," my mother laughed. But inside, I felt something powerful, confidence that no teacher could ever give me. As my English improved, I started using it to explore more of the world. I read articles online about culture, science, and history. I watched documentaries and understood almost everything. I joined an international Discord server where people from different countries met to talk and practice languages. At first, I stayed quiet, just listening. But one day, someone asked, "Who wants to start the topic today?" I raised my virtual hand and said, "I can." Everyone listened as I introduced a discussion about travel dreams. I realized then that I wasn't the quiet student anymore. I was part of a global conversation. My friends noticed the change too. Ryan said one day, "You speak more naturally now, like you don't even think before answering." I laughed, remembering how nervous we used to be just saying hello. We all had grown, but I was especially proud that our friendship had become the foundation of our learning. We still made mistakes, of course,
Sometimes we argued over grammar rules or mispronounced things, but we never gave up. Each mistake became a joke, not a failure. One evening, Kareem suggested that we start teaching English to younger students in our school. We learned it the hard way, he said. Let's make it easier for them. So we talked to Miss Sarah, and she helped us start a small English club. At first, only a few students came, but word spread fast. We played games, watched short clips, and spoke as much as possible. I found myself standing in front of a group of 10 kids, explaining how to pronounce th. It felt unreal. Me, the kid who once couldn't say thank you properly, was now teaching others. That's when I truly understood what learning means. It's not just about speaking, it's about sharing. The English Club became part of my identity. Every week, I prepared new topics and activities. My parents helped too. My mother made snacks for the kids, and my father printed flashcards at work. The club grew, and so did our confidence. Miss Sarah sometimes joined our sessions and smiled as she watched us lead. She once told me, "You remind me of my younger self. Never stop learning even when you start teaching." I promised I wouldn't. Time passed quickly. By the end of the school year, English had become more than just another subject. It was a lifestyle. I was thinking in English, dreaming in English, even joking in English. When my friends and I talked, we mixed our native language and English naturally, creating our own funny version of English. My parents laughed at it, but they were proud. My mother said, "You used to be shy, and now you speak like someone who's traveled the world." During summer vacation, I spent long nights studying alone in my room. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I practiced pronunciation using YouTube videos, recorded myself reading stories, and shadowed English speakers by repeating after them instantly. I realized that learning a language isn't about memorizing, it's about living it every day. I spoke to my reflection, to my cat, even to the air sometimes. My family joked that I was becoming crazy, but I didn't care. Every word I said made me a little better. One morning, I received a message from Maria, my Brazilian friend. She said, "Your English has improved so much. You sound like a native sometimes." That compliment meant more than any school grade. It reminded me how much effort I had put in. The late nights, the podcasts, the awkward videos, the laughter, the mistakes. Every part of it had built me into the person I was now. My journey wasn't perfect. There were still words I couldn't pronounce easily, idioms I didn't fully understand, and moments when I froze during conversations. But I had learned to accept those moments instead of fearing them. Every mistake was proof that I was trying, and that, I realized, was the real secret of progress. Not perfection, but persistence. One weekend, while sitting with my parents on the balcony, my father asked, "So, what's next? You've mastered English so well." I thought for a moment and said, "Maybe I'll learn another language." They both laughed, but I was serious. English had opened a door, and now I wanted to open more. My mother said, "Whatever you do, don't forget to keep teaching others."
I nodded, because she was right. Teaching wasn't just something I did for others. It was how I kept myself growing. As the sun set that evening, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. For my friends who made learning fun. For my parents who supported me even when they didn't understand what I was saying. For my teachers who believed in me. And for the younger version of myself, the shy kid who started speaking alone in his room, whispering simple words into the dark, dreaming of one day being fluent. Now, that dream wasn't just a dream anymore. It was my life. A few years passed after that summer, but the fire that English had lit inside me never faded. If anything, it grew stronger with time. When I entered university, English became a bridge to everything I wanted to learn. Most of the textbooks were written in English, the online lectures were in English, and the professors encouraged us to read research papers from around the world. For the first time, I realized that English was not just a language. It was a key that unlocked knowledge that would otherwise stay hidden. My roommates quickly discovered my passion. One of them, Amin, spoke decent English but didn't practice often. He was surprised when he heard me watching English podcasts and repeating after them. "You still do that?" he asked, smiling. I said, "Every single day." Soon, he joined me. Our evenings turned into mini English sessions where we watched videos, paused them, and tried to mimic the accents. Sometimes we laughed so hard that the neighbors knocked on our door asking what was so funny. We told them we were just learning. Outside of class, I made it a habit to greet everyone I met in English, even if they answered in our native language. Some thought it was weird at first, but then they got used to it. It became my thing. "Hey, English guy," my friends would call when they saw me. I liked it. I wasn't embarrassed anymore. At home, my parents continued to support me in small but meaningful ways. My mother would bring me English magazines whenever she went to the bookstore. She didn't know what they said, but she liked seeing me smile when I opened them. My father would ask me to help him write short emails for work, which he proudly sent afterward. "You see," he'd say, "your English is helping the whole family." It was true. What had started as a lonely effort in my room had now touched everyone around me. During my second year, I joined a volunteer program that connected local students with international visitors. I became a guide for tourists, showing them the city and explaining our culture in English. Each tour was a new adventure. Some tourists were amazed that I spoke so fluently. They asked where I had studied abroad, and I told them nowhere. I learned here, at home. They always looked surprised. I felt proud of that. Proud that you don't have to travel far to learn a language. Sometimes you just have to travel deep inside your own determination. I remember one day I was guiding a small group from Canada. One of them, an older man, said something that stayed with me. Language is not just words. It's the way you see the world. I thought about that sentence for days. He was right. Through English, I had seen the world differently. I had learned new ideas, met new people, and discovered sides of myself I didn't know existed. Back at the university dorm, I kept practicing with my friends online. Maria from Brazil still texted me. Now we talked about movies and life instead of grammar.
I joined calls with learners from Japan, Turkey, and Nigeria. Our accents were all different, but somehow we understood each other perfectly. That's the beauty of language. It doesn't have to sound perfect to connect people.
At night, I still had my quiet moments alone. I would sit by the window, put on my headphones, and listen to soft English podcasts. Sometimes I repeated after the speakers. Sometimes I just listened, letting the rhythm of the language sink in. Those moments felt peaceful, like having a conversation with the person I used to be. I often smiled, remembering how nervous I was in the beginning, how I used to hide my phone screen when practicing because I was afraid someone would laugh. Now, I wished that shy boy could see me.
Then came one of the biggest turning points. I got an internship at a local company that worked with foreign clients. The interview was in English. I was nervous, but as soon as I started talking, the words came naturally. I told the interviewer about my journey, how I had learned English by practicing with friends, with my family, and alone in my room. He smiled and said, "You're hired." That was the first time my English brought me real professional success.
During the internship, I was responsible for writing emails and joining online meetings. The first time I spoke during a meeting with people from another country, my hands were sweating. But then I heard them respond politely, and I realized they understood me clearly. My colleagues later told me, "You spoke so confidently." I laughed because they had no idea how many hours I had spent talking to myself to reach that point.
One day after work, I called my mother. She asked how things were going. I said, "I just spoke with someone from the UK for an hour in English." She laughed in disbelief. "You used to mispronounce 'thank you,' and now you're doing business meetings," she said proudly. That call stayed with me for days. The more I used English, the more it shaped who I was. It wasn't just a tool anymore. It was part of my personality. When I spoke English, I felt more confident, more expressive. It was as if the language gave me permission to dream bigger. It helped me think about the future, maybe working abroad, or teaching, or even creating something of my own. By the end of university, I had become known as the English mentor. Juniors often came to me for help with pronunciation or essays. I never said no. I remembered how lost I felt when I started, so I tried to give them the guidance I once needed. I told them my secret. You don't need perfect grammar. You need courage. Talk even when it's hard. Listen even when you don't understand everything. That's how you grow. After graduation, I decided to create an online group for English learners. It was just a small chat at first, but soon people from many countries joined. We shared tips, practiced conversations, and celebrated each other's progress. Watching them grow reminded me of my own journey, and it filled me with pride. One evening, after finishing a long online call with my group, I sat in my quiet room. My parents were asleep, and the world outside was silent. I thought about all the years that had passed since I first whispered my first English words alone in the dark.
I could almost see that younger version of me, the boy with the phone in his hand, repeating simple sentences like, "My name is," and "I am learning English." If I could talk to him now, I'd tell him, "Keep going! You'll be amazed where this takes you."
Learning English had taught me more than just vocabulary. It had taught me patience, discipline, curiosity, and empathy. I had learned to listen before speaking, to appreciate mistakes, and to celebrate small victories. It had also brought me closer to my parents and friends. We had all shared in the process. Even now, when I visit home, my father still jokes in broken English, and my mother still asks me to translate songs. Every time she does, I feel that same warmth I felt in the beginning.
One afternoon, while walking through the park with Kareem, we talked about how far we'd come. "Remember when we couldn't say a full sentence without laughing?" he asked. I nodded. "Now you're working with foreigners, and I'm teaching English in a small center. Crazy, right?" We both laughed. It really was crazy. The language that once felt impossible had now become a part of our everyday lives.
As the sun went down, Kareem said something that stayed with me. You know, English didn't just teach us words, it taught us to believe we could change. I smiled. He was right.
That night, I sat down to write again, this time in English. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to capture every memory. I wrote about the late nights with my friends, the laughter, the endless recordings, the patient encouragement from my parents, and the small victories that added up to something life-changing. I realized that learning English had become a story worth telling, a story about effort, friendship, and faith in small beginnings.
And as I wrote the final words, I whispered to myself, "This is only the beginning." Because it truly was. Even now, years later, I still practice. I still watch new shows, read new books, and talk to new people. Not because I'm afraid of forgetting, but because I've learned that a language is like a friendship. It grows when you care for it. I still help others who are just starting. When they say, "It's too hard," I tell them, "I started from zero too. You can do it." Sometimes, late at night, I catch myself smiling for no reason. I think back to the journey, the shy boy, the laughter with friends, the patient parents, the competitions, the online calls, the small club we built together. Every step was a word, and every word was a step forward. English didn't just teach me how to speak, it taught me how to keep moving, even when things seemed impossible. And so, every morning, when I look at myself in the mirror, I say in English, "Good morning." It's not just a greeting anymore. It's a reminder of everything I've become.